Hello and welcome to Future Procurement. It is a great day for me personally. Really many things are happening in the Future Procurement community and that makes me super excited. And on top of all the good things I had today, I'm really excited to have the very special guest today. It is David Rajakovich. And David is a managing partner at Procurement Academy and Supply Chain Academy, working to design competence development programs for procurement and for supply chain professionals. So, as you hear it, dear listeners, this is a super important guest. David, warm welcome to Future Procurement Podcast.
Oh, thanks, Robert. You probably went a little too far with that introduction in terms of me being so important, but I appreciate the gesture anyway.
And before we jump really into the Procurement Academy, which is a really exciting topic, at least for me, David, please tell a little bit about your background, who you are, and how did you get until this role where you are today?
Yeah, I've had quite a varied background. Believe it or not, I started my career as a U.S. Army officer leading Patriot missile batteries, which of course leads directly into procurement. I've worked not only for the U.S. Army, that was a short stint, but I've also worked in manufacturing for Alcoa, and then I began in procurement as a consultant almost 10 years ago, which doesn't seem that long, but sure enough it is. And today, as you said, I'm the head of research and development for Procurement Academy, Supply Chain Academy, and the soon-to-be unveiled Sales Academy.
Sales Academy. Okay.
Sales Academy is in the works. It's not even you won't find it anywhere, but it's coming. It's
a very fresh information which very little people know.
That's right. This community is one of the first.
Now maybe tell us a little bit more about Procurement Academy and Supply Chain Academy. Which kind of knowledge and skills are you delivering there and how it's built?
Absolutely. Procurement and Supply Chain Academy are built specifically for the corporate market as opposed to a more academic individual education.
Yeah.
We do scenario-based, application-based training, which basically means we take out all the jargon, the buzzwords, and high-sounding principles, and we really show people how to apply what we teach. I'll just give you an example. Instead of saying we need to reduce WIP inventory, we show people how to implement a Kanban system that achieves it. Not just saying we use Kanban, but actually showing it visually and explaining it through dialogue in a real scenario.
It's very interesting the way you present it, and I think it's worth mentioning, and it's worth a special description that you have characters throughout the education which are living like these different kind of experiences or scenarios, as you call it.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? What is the interface? How does it look like? Because it's really special to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's instead of, what we would call rapid e-learning, which is more kind of PowerPoint based, maybe has a voiceover and has lots of text on the screen and maybe even, some basic moving parts. Instead of that, we make it more like a movie, I would say. And it has real characters. For instance, the protagonist is almost always Daniel. And Daniel's placed in the role of the learner. And Daniel has to interact with a lot of different people, a lot of different stakeholders, and we try to add a bit of humor in there as well while we learn, and basically putting Daniel in a real scenario, I think makes it very clear the link between what we're teaching and how to apply something. And Daniel actually, throughout the course, he's presented with a problem early in the course, and the entire course is about showing how he solves the problem, rather than kind of throwing out principles where people are not really sure how to apply them. And I think that's the beauty and the differentiator of what we do.
Exactly, and this just from my side, I will confirm it as a user. Let's say you are the developer, but I was a user of this a few times. I mean, I have not gone through all courses, obviously, but I mean the way it was presented, and this, as you said, differentiates Procurement Academy was that it's not only the person on the screen who is teaching you. Even entertaining, it doesn't matter, is it boring or entertaining, but still just given the theory is one thing. But when you really look at Daniel, yes, look at this character, and you try to follow him and try to think, being in his shoes, you really have a much better involvement in the course. You have much better understanding of how the things are, what is a way of thinking, if I say it like this. And then in the end, it's always a little bit of a summary of situation, and it was Anna sometimes or some other, I don't remember all their names,
and Mr.
who make
Wins.
the summary of what has happened and what should you learn out of it, right?
Yes. Anna is Daniel's boss, and Mr. Wins is kind of the narrator who comes in and provides some of the general takeaways from what specifically happened in the course.
So this is really interesting and really entertaining in a way. Okay, David, one more question. All of your materials are online education, right? It's not on-site, but it's online.
That's where we focus. We do offer kind of the classroom style training, but we'll probably get into that, I think, later in the discussion. Where which format works best. But yes, we're mainly on the digital side.
Because the things I also promote for my listeners is online education, and for me there are some obvious benefits of having online education. Is of course accessibility wherever you are you on the trip or whatever. But can you elaborate a little bit more from your side? I mean, being in this business over the few years, Procurement Academy can say their own standpoint on the good and bad sides of having online education. Can you elaborate for our listeners what are the obvious and non-obvious strong and weak sides?
Absolutely. Yeah, digital training I think is great because you can train your entire department in all the skills that they need to the level that is needed for their job at a manageable cost. Imagine if you had to train a procurement practitioner in negotiation, supplier relationship management, category management, cost management, finance, and legal by taking them out of work for a few days, flying them to a training course, and then putting them up in a hotel for a few days for each skill. Basically, it's never going to happen. So I think that's one of the kind of obvious advantages of digital training. Digital training also, I think it's kind of a misconception that digital training is like settling for lower quality. And I would argue that the opposite is actually the case. It could be just as effective, if not more than a classroom session. And I'll tell you why. First is, with our training programs, digital content can be spaced out over time. If you went to a category management course, for instance, you'd be there for 3 days and you would get lots and lots of information thrown at you, of which, about 6 months down the line, you would have forgotten 80% of it. Just think back to your university days, or if you did an MBA or something. So this way, it can be spaced out over time, and by the time you start to forget the first piece of content, you're reminded with another piece of content that actually makes you go back and think about what you learn in e-learning and say apply it in a simulation in a real life scenario. So that of course makes you remember it.
Okay, so you can really choose your own pace, and you can also apply the things after you just have learned, and then start the next task or the next chapter only after you have experienced and applied the previous one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's a place for classroom training, in a training program. And for us, that's once you've got the fundamentals covered, then you go into a classroom session where you don't need to rehash the fundamentals. If say running an RFP or doing a cost breakdown or whatever the case may be, you're actually applying it to your own situation. And I think, that is an important, or that's the best way to use classroom training, is once you've got the fundamentals down, then you apply it in a targeted way to a learner situation.
Can you say some there must be some negative points where it doesn't work completely? Is there any situation? Because we for sure will have some listeners who will say, it doesn't work. Can you say some examples where it really doesn't work?
Well, I think if you're trying to become an expert in a particular skill, then it may not. Then you don't want to solely rely on digital learning, because you actually have to go out and do it in order to be an expert. And our training plans account for that through things like application-based tasks. We've got an app that's in development that's going to even help facilitate that sort of on-the-job learning that you can only get through real experience. And once you have the fundamentals and you need to apply it, then sitting down with an experienced trainer or consultant, I think is certainly valuable, and you can't only do the digital thing.
David, coming to the next question,
Sure.
I thought about the real demand of the education for procurement on the market. What do you see? You have some statistic for sure, and what is the need in procurement and supply chain education on the market, and what do professionals look for?
Yeah, I think professionals really want something that makes them better at their job. And I think they get frustrated with, I hear stories of this all the time talking to customers. This training, it was kind of interesting, but I have no idea how it applies to my job. And I don't know, I don't know how to apply it. Or there's, maybe there's just some gray area there. But I think professionals want something, and we get feedback on every one of our courses, as you mentioned. And what they want is something that's short and concise and that cuts out all the fluff. I think the corporate professional hates when you waste their time. I'm thinking of just off the top of my head, I saw a training video once and spent about 20 minutes talking about how to make spaghetti bolognese. And while that's a really interesting topic and all, I guess if you're into that sort of thing, then it's okay. But I mean, if you're trying to train people, corporate professionals that are busy, they don't want to waste their time. They want to get right down to it. So we cut out all the fluff and just get down to what people need to know.
Exactly. I have also many of similar experiences in the past, because online courses was also a big passion of mine, and I have gone, for example, MBA through the online videos.
Okay.
And so I really am in love with it, and there were many Coursera courses and some other platforms when I have where I was grabbing really different kinds of small and bigger educations. And that's I completely understand what you say, because sometimes if the course on some very, very precise topic is like 20 hours or whatever, and it really scares me even. For them it's like the big benefit of we have so many hours of video, for example, but
that's a great point. That is absolutely, it's fundamental to what we do too. Is the part that I didn't mention is that we already have this big library, and having a big library is great. There's a competitor of ours that says they have 1,000 courses.
Yeah.
Where actually it's a bunch of PDFs and recorded webinars and stuff that we wouldn't call a course. And I think having a big library is great, but we target then exactly what a learner sees based on their role. If they're a junior buyer, they're not going to get 8 courses on category management, talking about very advanced concepts that they may not even understand, or at least until they've gained a bit more experience. And same with the flip side. We're not going to show a category manager maybe a course on basic negotiation, which they may have seen a bunch of other times. We have different ways of doing that, but basically, the training program is targeted to you as an individual and especially to your role.
Yeah, that's important. So what are the most popular courses?
I think probably our most popular courses are advanced negotiation courses. I think it's just a sexy topic that everyone likes.
Exactly. That's what I thought also.
But I would argue that those on like total cost of ownership and value engineering, they're also popular and arguably more valuable. Okay. I would say the ones I would point out, category management, we have quite a good offering there, starting from spend analysis and which categories to attack, all the way through to kind of continuous improvement. And the other ones I would mention are sustainability. Those are becoming more popular and in demand, and those are relatively new courses that I think we've done pretty well.
This is something I didn't expect at all. Negotiations, I was sure that it will be. I thought about RFQ or this kind of quotation process, bidding process. Do you have, by the way, such courses?
Yes. Yeah, we've got all the fundamentals covered.
Sustainability is something new. Is there any more trends that you see in the past? It was very popular, now it's less popular, or something that is really gaining the popularity or going up?
Yeah, I think it's gaining in popularity. There's always the hot topics like Internet of Things and big data, and those types of things are coming as well. And in supply chain, we're starting to really tackle that as well. We're talking about how Amazon has gained market share and actually done a lot of damage to the P&L account of a lot of retailers. And so those are the kind of things that we're tackling now. And those are going to be some really cool courses as well.
Now, that's fantastic. It's really interesting to see that you follow the trends and you follow the demand. I mean,
yeah,
absolutely. These topics you are naming are really, I'm very curious. Is it something new on that? Okay, very interesting. Tell us about the application of the knowledge. Do you have any ideas how to, especially having online courses, how to make sure that the listener or the students really apply the knowledge in a good way? Do you have any like follow-ups or something? Like you mentioned that application, but it's not yet ready.
Right. Yes, that's something that's in the pipeline. But I mean, in terms of how we make sure it's applied, this is really fundamental to what we do. And we ask, for example, after every course and even things like simulations, we ask our learners to give us an example of how they're going to apply it in their particular job. And we learn from that. And we learn from that ourselves in terms of what we need to develop.
Yeah.
But we also learn whether our content is actually hitting the spot or not. So if a learner can't give an example of how it's applied, it means one of three things. One is we either need to improve that piece of content, make it more relevant to people's role. We need to remove it from the training plan for a particular role for a particular client, because maybe it's not something they're expected to do. Or the third option is we get with managers and we meet with them regularly to help guide the learner to basically give feedback to say, hey, your learner is saying, I don't need to apply this in their role. And frankly, that could be news to the manager, thinking, man, I sure wish that they would apply this in their role. And so then we prompt the manager to kind of intervene and guide the learner on the fact that they do need to be applying this. And help them out with that. That's pretty much how we constantly ensure that people are applying, what they're learning.
That's very, very interesting, and I think it leads us to the next question I had on my list here is about the some main recommendations you can give to the people, managers or procurement specialists, supply chain specialists, when they are looking for the training solution, when they are looking for the education?
Yes, if I'm a procurement or supply chain executive, real briefly, here's what I'm going to ask. Can your solution help me demonstrate its value, both in terms of reporting so that I can stand out, and in terms of making sure all my learners get the most out of their program? And that's something I would certainly be asking. Can your solution demonstrate its value?
Right.
Second thing would be, does your training show in a practical way, in a real scenario, for instance, how a concept is applied, rather than, say, describe, for example, the difference between price and cost, which then I can go away and I can understand what the difference is, but how do I actually apply that knowledge? And that's the step further that we take. The third thing would be, how can I most quickly and effectively get my global team up to the required skill level in all procurement and supply chain skills? And that's something that I would be asking my my learning and development professionals, or whoever's handling this for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. It gives me so much consciousness about choosing the courses in the future, because I'm still learning myself. And then when you describe it in this way, and I think I will include it in the show notes as a top 3 recommendations to consider when you are choosing the next course.
Great.
Or the solution provider, like if we talk here about choosing the program or the provider of education. I think this is really fabulous. It
Great.
gives so much more understanding of what you are looking for, because sometimes, and I catch myself on it honestly, I want to have few courses per year. I have my goal for every half year, I said. So for example, this half year until Christmas, I need to have 2 more courses, and it feels like I'm looking for just to tick it off, But,
yes.
Without really being very conscious. So I will use your recommendations maybe for choosing the next ones.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean that means you're quite disciplined then. How we help with that is because not everybody is quite so disciplined as Robert here. So we have program managers that we call them support officers, who follow up with learners and make sure they stay on track. And we try to we do it both ways, but our preferred method is that we establish training plans and we agree them either by role or even by person, and we follow up and make sure they actually happen, and that makes our completion rate phenomenally high. When people do that, the completion rate is around 99%. If you leave learners to kind of be disciplined and choose courses, you tend to have less success, and that's what we've seen over tens of thousands of learners that we've dealt with. So I think that is an important point. Thanks for taking me there, Robert. I wasn't really planning on talking about that, but I think that's an important point.
Sometimes I do some coaching session or education sessions, and I really understand what you say from perspective of provider of education, and this completion rate is really, even having the live events. I remember if the program is few days, and for sure until the last day some people drop off or something like this. But really how to, I mean, it also is a big art or the big science, I don't know how to even call it, to really make people take them by hand and really take them to the end of the course, and really make them use the knowledge later on. But also as a student, I really appreciate, because as I said before, I'm not the most conscious and disciplined person when it comes to education, so I catch myself that sometimes I'm also like this, so this is very much appreciated.
Great.
Okay, David, maybe in the end of our interview, the time really flies. Now I'm looking at the watch here and I'm really surprised that time flies like crazy talking to you.
When you're having fun, that's how it is.
It is how it is. Can you maybe give a short or long answer talking about the professional education of the future. How does it look like? What is the role of your company, Procurement Academy, Supply Chain Academy, and maybe similar type of education? How do you see its role in the future professional education?
Yeah, sure. Well, I won't give you too long of an answer because that would be against our principles. But I think there's always going to be a need for teaching practical fundamentals. There's a lot of fads, things like microlearning and gamification, which are great if they're used in the right context, and we have answers for those. However, if somebody is trying to sell you on the latest fad being all you need, I think they might be mistaken. So I think there's always going to be a need for having a base of fundamentals. Because think about it, imagine a corporation in which all the buyers were as skilled as they needed to be in all the different procurement competencies. I think it'd be quite an amazing achievement, really. What will change over time is the technology, and the technology will allow us to put learners, I would say, in ever more real situations, from which they'll gain experience. And I think of it like this. You can gain experience, but it takes it takes time to do that. If you can give people more rich experiences sooner in their careers, they go up that learning curve that much faster. And so I think that it's our role to continue to develop innovative ways to put people in real situations, ever more real situations, and learn from it faster and more effectively. And as I see it, corporations can just focus on getting talented people in the door rather than focus on particular bits of experience. And through procurement, supply chain, and soon to be sales academy, we just get the talented people in the door, and we can handle getting them up to speed quickly. And that way, you've got a pipeline of talented people with the potential to grow in the organization who are just continuing to flow into the organization. And when you've got holes to fill, you'll have a high potential, well-trained person ready to step in. So right now, I think we're ahead of the market in allowing corporations to do this, but we certainly can't rest, and we are just going, full steam ahead in terms of staying ahead of the market and staying the partner of choice to allow corporations to get talented people in, train them up, and plug them in and help them and get them delivering value.
Fantastic, and I really like your way of describing it. And from this perspective, I fully confirm the things you said. I mean, about the way how you deliver materials, and it's really outstanding on the market. I say from my experience as a learner, but also as a very amateur teacher, if I say like this.
Great.
So it's really, really fantastic and impressive the way you look in the future with the education, with online education, and having really to the point and tailor-made and customized education depending on your role, depending on your experience. And
absolutely,
I think this is really what is gonna be valuable for the future. And I'm really, really wishing you best of luck, not only to your ever-growing organization or company, but also to you personally. And I really respect the work you are doing there. Really impressive.
Great, Robert. Well, thanks for having me on today. It was a pleasure getting to speak with you.
Thank you, dear friends, for listening this episode till the very end. Today we were talking to David Rajakovich, who is a managing partner at Procurement Academy and Supply Chain Academy. They are designing the competence development programs for procurement and supply chain professionals, and the base for those programs are cool, movie-like animated e-learning videos. I really admire them, and I highly recommend, if you are considering to have the procurement or supply chain education, go to their website, I will attach it in the show notes, and investigate what can be useful for you. And by the way, if you decide to buy some of the courses, please mention Future Procurement, and then you will receive a good discount from them. Wish you a fantastic day, fantastic work week, and wish you a lot of energy for your constant professional and personal development. My name is Robert Freeman, and this was Future Procurement. Talk to you soon.